Hello students, welcome to the course Physics Principles and Applications for FY BSc Semester 1 Physics Paper 2 Phy 112 as per the revised syllabus of Savitribai Phule Pune University CBCS 2019 pattern. I am Dr. Amol Rahane welcomes you to this lecture. In the previous lecture, we have studied different types of bonds. We have also studied the ionic bond and covalent bond in detail. In today's lecture, we are going to study the van der Waals bond, hydrogen bond and metallic bond. So, we are studying our third chapter, Physics of Molecules. So, we have already studied different types of bonding mechanisms. So, we have studied the ionic bond and covalent bond in detail. So, let us study the van der Waals or molecular bond. So, this bond is named after Dutch physicist Johannes Diederik van der Waals. So, this bond formed between the inert gas atoms or different molecules. So, this bond may exist between different inert gas atoms. So, we know that inert gas atoms they cannot form the ionic or covalent bond because of their complete shell closures. So, such gas atoms or rare gas atoms they form the van der Waals bond. So, this kind of bond is also exist in between different molecules. So, therefore, it is called as a molecular bond. It is a weakest kind of bond. So, it is weaker than the ionic and covalent bond as well as all the other types of bonds. All the atoms, molecules or even inert gas atoms exhibit weak short range attraction force between one another called as van der Waals force, and the bond formed by this weak short range attractive force between different atoms or between atoms of the same or different molecules through weak electrostatic attraction is called as van der Waals bond. This bonding occurs for those elements or compounds whose electronic configuration is such that little electron transfer takes place between their atoms. That means their electronic configuration is such that only small amount of electron transfer can take place, and therefore this kind of bond will form. In a noble gas atom, their outer electronic shell is complete. Therefore, in that case the primary bond like ionic or covalent bonds cannot be formed because such bonds formation requires adjustment of valence electrons, which is not possible in the case of noble gases. Therefore, a weak interaction force exists between atoms of noble gases. These forces are called as van der Waals forces. In case of noble gases, they are the only interact. Similarly, in the case of molecules, the van der Waals forces are due to resultant of the weak electrostatic attraction between the nucleus of one atom and the electrons of the other, and electrostatic repulsion between electrons of one atom and electrons of the other atom, and the resultant force will give rise to the van der Waals force or van der Waals bond. So, these interaction they include dipole-dipole interaction, dipole-induced dipole interaction and London dispersion forces. They appear in molecules of many different compounds. So, let us consider the example of PVC. So, we all know PVC means the polyvinyl chloride compound used in the making of plastic pipes. So, PVC is a polymer of vinyl chloride. So, basically it is consists of the vinyl chloride monomers. So, we have this vinyl chloride molecule, one vinyl chloride molecule. So, we call it monomer. So we have such monomers. When these monomers they come together, the bond carbon carbon double bond in between them, that bond breaks, and these monomers form a polymer, or it is if they form a chain, right. So it is a polymer of vinyl chloride, right. So polymer of vinyl chloride is formed where the carbon atom has one carbon atom has one chlorine atom on one side and hydrogen atom on the other side, whereas the adjacent chlorine carbon atom has two hydrogen attached to it, right. So since this kind of bonding is formed, so we know that the chlorine atom is more electronegative than that of the hydrogen atom, and because of that the chlorine atom attracts the electron pair between this carbon chlorine bond towards itself, right. So because of that this electron pair is attracted more towards the chlorine than that of the carbon. Similarly, in the case of hydrogen, the electron pair is attracted more towards this side, carbon side, and because of that this slightly negative charge is developed on the chlorine atom and slightly positive charge is developed on this hydrogen atom on the opposite side. So when such polymers, when two such polymers they come closer, in that case they form the bonding, right. So let us consider this HH atom here. So in the case of the PVC material, so this Cl of one carbon which it will attach with the hydrogen of another carbon, right. So a weak bond will be formed between the hydrogen and chlorine atom, and this kind of bond is called as van der Waals bond. So let us study the properties of van der Waals bonded crystals. The van der Waals bonds are weakest bonds among all other bonds. The van der Waals crystals have low melting and boiling points. They have very weak mechanical strength. The van der Waals solids have no valence electrons, hence they are good insulators. The van der Waals crystals are soluble in both polar and non-polar solvents. The van der Waals bonds are responsible for liquefaction or solidification of inert gases. They have no directional characteristics. They are all short range forces, and hence only interactions between the nearest particles need to be considered instead of all the particles. So van der Waals attraction is greater if the molecules are closer. That means the van der Waals bonds are short range bonds. That means the bonds will be formed between the nearest neighbor atoms only, right. And when the nearest neighbor atoms they are closer to each other, then they only the van der Waals bond will be formed, right. The van der Waals forces are independent of temperature except for dipole-dipole interactions. Let us study the hydrogen bonds in detail. A hydrogen bond is formed due to the weak electrostatic force of attraction between the lone pair of an electronegative atom and a hydrogen atom that is bonded to another electronegative atom like nitrogen, oxygen or fluorine. That means in the case of hydrogen bond, what we have a molecule that which contain a electronegative atom like nitrogen, oxygen and fluorine, which is bonded to an hydrogen atom. This hydrogen atom will interact with another electronegative atom of another molecule through hydrogen bonding. So the hydrogen bond is a type of dipole-dipole interaction formed between a hydrogen atom from a molecule or a molecular fragment, call it XH, in which X is an electronegative atom, and an atom or a group of other electronegative atoms, we call it Y, having a pair of non-bonded electrons in the same or a different molecule. Such a bond is usually denoted by X bonded with hydrogen, X covalently bonded with hydrogen. So, this X is an electronegative atom, and this hydrogen, that will be hydrogen bonded with another electronegative atom Y. In a H bond consists of an electronegative atom, nitrogen, oxygen or fluorine, called as the hydrogen bond donor, and that is bonded with the H atom through covalent bond, and another electronegative atom bearing a lone pair of electrons called as the hydrogen bond acceptor. That means the electronegative atom in the molecule, that is, we call it hydrogen bond donor, that is attached to the hydrogen atom, and another electronegative atom from another molecule that will interact with the hydrogen atom in this molecule, right. So, each electronegative atom, so we know that nitrogen, oxygen or fluorine, all these they contain a lone pairs, right, and therefore, they can interact with the hydrogen atom in the molecule, another molecule, and they act as a hydrogen bond acceptor, right. So, such an interacting system is generally denoted by this DN, so donor covalently bonded with hydrogen, and this which is hydrogen bonded with the acceptor atom, right. So, where the solid line denotes a fully covalent bond and the dotted or dashed line indicates the hydrogen bond. So, in general I can write the A atom is covalently bonded with hydrogen, and this hydrogen is hydrogen bonded or weakly bonded with the B atom. So, here A and B are electronegative atom. So, here A is different than B, or sometimes this A is same as B, and therefore, we can write A is covalently bonded with hydrogen, and this hydrogen is weakly bonded with another electronegative atom, and therefore, we can have this kind of bonding. So, where A and B are nitrogen, oxygen or fluorine, any of the 3 atoms. So, this hydrogen bond is stronger than a van der Waals interaction and weaker than fully covalent or ionic bond. So, it is in between the van der Waals and covalent and ionic bond. So, we know that the ionic bond is strongest, then followed by the covalent bond, and the van der Waals bonds in the weakest bond. So, hydrogen bond falls between them. This type of bond can occur in inorganic molecules such as water, and in organic molecules like DNA and proteins. Depending on the nature of the donor and acceptor atoms which constitute the bond, their geometry and environment, the energy of an hydrogen bond can vary between 1 to 40 kilocalorie per mole. Let us study the types of hydrogen bonds. So, intermolecular hydrogen bonding and intramolecular hydrogen bonding are the two types of the hydrogen bonds. In the case of intermolecular hydrogen bonding, when hydrogen bonding takes place between different molecules of the same or different compounds, then it is called as intermolecular hydrogen bonding. That means the molecules are different. So, different molecules, they bond with each other through hydrogen bonding, then it is called as intermolecular hydrogen bonding. The molecules may be of the same or different compound. For example, in the case of water, there is hydrogen bonding. In the case of alcohol and ammonia also, we can see the hydrogen bonding, right. So, here in the case of water molecules, the hydrogen bonding will be in between the molecules of the water itself, right. But alcohol is mixed with water, in that case the hydrogen bonding will be in between the water molecule and alcohol molecules, right. Intramolecular hydrogen bonding, in which the hydrogen bonding which takes place within a molecule itself. So, in this kind of bonding, the hydrogen bonding will take place within the same molecule, right. So, in that case the molecule may contain different groups or two groups such that the one group contains the hydrogen linked to the electronegative atom and the other group contains a highly electronegative atom linked to a lesser electronegative atom of the other group, and therefore this kind of bond will form between these two let us say a hydrogen atom of one group and the more electronegative atom of the other group, right. So, here we have an example of intramolecular and intermolecular hydrogen bond. So, in the case of this orthonitrophenol, what we have is intramolecular hydrogen bonding. Here we have the same molecule, and in this molecule here this nitrogen and oxygen, right. So, this oxygen attached to nitrogen atom, and here this hydrogen attached to this or another oxygen atom. So, this oxygen and hydrogen they will bond with each other through hydrogen bonding. In the case of para-nitrophenol, we can see the intermolecular hydrogen bonding. Here what we have in the para isomer of this nitrophenol, what we have the two such molecules is intermolecular H bonding. Now, let us consider the hydrogen bond in HF molecule or hydrogen fluoride molecule. So, we know that the hydrogen has electronic configuration 1s1, right. So, we have only one electron in the hydrogen. In the case of fluorine, we have atomic number 9 and electronic configuration is 1s2, 2s2, 2p5. That means the outermost shell or 2 second shell which has 7 electrons, right. And we know that only these outermost electrons they take part in the bonding, and therefore, in the this Lewis dot structure we have shown only the outermost 7 electrons. That means the hydrogen atom either can take 1 electron or it can donate 1 electron, right, and fluorine need 1 electron, right. So, in between them if when the covalent bond is formed, that means when hydrogen atom comes in closer to the fluorine atom, they will form a covalent bond, right. When the covalent bond is formed, a HF molecule will be formed. But we know that electronegativity of this fluorine is highest, right. So, it is the highest electronegative atom, and because of that it will attract the electron pair, shared electron pair towards itself, right. So, here this is the HF bond and this is the electron pair which is attracted more towards the fluorine atom than the hydrogen atom, and because of that a slight negative charge is developed on fluorine atom and a slight positive charge is developed on this hydrogen atom, and we can say our molecule is polarized molecule. When two such hydrogen fluoride molecules they come closer, there is interaction between partially positively charged hydrogen of one molecule to the partially negatively charged fluorine of another molecule, and there will this interaction is weaker interaction and we call it hydrogen bond. That means, in the case of this HF molecule, a weak hydrogen bonding we can say a weak bond is formed, and that bond is called as hydrogen bond, though since the fluorine is highest electronegative atom, this is the strongest hydrogen bond among all the other hydrogen bonds, right. So, this is the hydrogen bonding. Let us study the hydrogen bonding in water. So, in the case of water molecule, what we have one oxygen atom and 2 hydrogen atoms, right. So, we have seen in the case of water the again the electronegativity of oxygen is higher as compared to that of the hydrogen, and because of this electronegativity difference the covalent bonding shared electron pair between the OH bond will be attracted most towards the oxygen atom than the hydrogen atom, and because of that a slightly negative charge is developed on the oxygen atom and slightly positive charge is developed on the hydrogen atoms. When two or more such when two or more such water molecules come closer, so in the case of water, what we have, the partially positively charged hydrogen atom of one molecule interact with the partially negatively charged oxygen atom of the other molecule through weaker bonding, and this kind of bonding is called as hydrogen. Each such water molecule can interact with 4 other water molecules through the hydrogen bonding, right. So this is one of the example of hydrogen bonding, because one oxygen can interact with 2 hydrogen atom through hydrogen bonding, because a slightly double negative charge is developed on the oxygen atom compared to that of the hydrogen atom, and because of that the oxygen will interact with 2 hydrogen atoms of 2 different water molecules. So this is the hydrogen bonding in water molecule. Let us study the properties of hydrogen bonds. First one is the solubility. So we know the lower alcohols such as methyl alcohol, ethyl alcohol are soluble in water because of the hydrogen bonding which can take place between water and alcohol molecules. Next property is volatility. As the compounds involving hydrogen bonding between different molecules have a higher boiling points, so they are less volatile. Another property of hydrogen bonds, that is viscosity and surface tension. The substances which contain hydrogen bonding exist as an associated molecule, so their flow become comparatively difficult. They have higher viscosity and high surface tension. Another property of hydrogen bonds is the lower density of ice than water. In the case of solid ice, the hydrogen bonding gives rise to a cage-like structure of water molecules. As a matter of fact, each water molecule is linked tetrahedral to 4 water molecules. The molecules are not as closely packed as they are in a liquid state. When ice melts, these case-like structures collapses and the molecules come closer to each other. Thus, for the same mass of water, the volume decreases and density increases. Therefore, ice has a lower density than water at 0 degree Celsius. That is why ice floats. Another property of the hydrogen bonds is high melting and boiling points. The compounds having hydrogen bonding show abnormally high melting and boiling points. The high melting and boiling points of the compounds containing hydrogen bonds is due to the fact that some extra energy is needed to break these bonds. For example, boiling point of hydrogen fluoride is higher among the halogen acids. Water is a liquid, whereas H2S or H2SE or H2TE are all gases at ordinary temperature. It is because the hydrogen bonding is formed in H2O molecule or water molecule, but it is absent in the case of H2S or H2SE or H2TE, and because of that all these compounds they are gases at ordinary temperature, whereas water is liquid. These are some of the properties of hydrogen bonds. Now let us study the metallic bonds. So metallic bonds are closely exist between the closely packed metal atoms. So in the case of metal atoms or metals, what we have, the another kind of bonding, that is metallic bonding. So, in the case of metals, what we have, the outer energy levels of the metal atoms, they overlap with each other. So, the valence electrons can move and flow freely throughout the substance, and a force of attraction between a positively charged metal ion and the electrons in a metal is called as metallic bond. So, many properties of metals such as conductivity, ductility and malleability result from the freely moving electrons in the metal. So, we know that the metals, they are electrically and thermally conductive, they have very high ductility and malleability, and because of that we can make sheets, thin sheets or wires out of the metals, and all these properties are because of this metallic bonding. So, let us see what we have here, the ion cores in the case of metals. So, these ion cores, they are positive ion cores, they involve the positively charged nucleus and core electrons, whereas the valence electrons, they are free to move inside the substance, right. So, these are the free electrons and these are the ion cores. So, the bond exists between the positively charged ion cores and these free electrons. So, this interaction that gives rise to the metallic bond. So, these free electrons, they are not attached to a single atom, but they are property of whole the substance, we can say, and therefore, they can freely move throughout the substance, right. So, they are free to move throughout the substance. So, we can see the electrons, they are freely moving, and because of that we can see the properties of conductivity, right, malleability and ductility in the case of metals. So, let us study the properties of metallic bonds. So, they have a crystalline structure. So, all the metals, they have the crystalline structure. Their electrical conductivity is extremely high due to the availability of unlimited number of free electrons. Since metallic bonds are not very strong, such solids have usually moderate to high melting temperature. They have high thermal conductivity, which is again due to the presence of free electrons which serve as carriers for heat. Since free electrons in a metal absorb light energy, all metals are opaque to light. And metallic solids are soft, malleable and ductile. That means we can make thin sheets or wires out of it. So, in this today's lecture, we have studied the different bonds such as van der Waals bond, hydrogen bonds and metallic bonds. So, we know that the ionic bonds are the strongest bond, then we have the covalent bond, and after that comes the metallic bond, which are slightly stronger than the hydrogen and van der Waals bonding, but weaker than that of the ionic and covalent bonding. In the case of hydrogen bonding, the bond is formed between the hydrogen atom attached to one electronegative atom and another electronegative atom of another molecule when come in contact with that hydrogen atom. So, this hydrogen bond is weaker than the metallic bond, but it is stronger than the van der Waals bonds. That means the van der Waals bonds are the weakest bonds, but they exist between the inert gases and they are responsible for the liquefaction or solidification of inert gas atoms. Thank you.